8 months before that cafeteria, before the cathedral, before any of it, Dr. Zariah Voss was not thinking about anyone. She was thinking about the patient in Bay 2, male, mid-40s, blunt abdominal trauma, pressure dropping faster than the numbers on the monitor could keep up with. She was thinking about the angle of entry, the sequence of decisions that needed to happen in the next 90 seconds, and the fact that the resident beside her was hesitating in the particular way that residents hesitate when they are waiting for someone else to be certain first. She did not wait for certainty, she built it. Push the second line, now, and get me Rourke from cardio, not in 5 minutes, now. The resident moved, the room moved. That was how it worked when Zariah was in it. She was 32 years old, deep brown skin, dark eyes that missed nothing, short natural curls pulled back into a low bun that had survived a 12-hour shift and would survive whatever came after it. She wore navy scrubs under a white coat she had earned in the specific way that things are earned when there is no one behind you to catch what you drop. Through years of work that left no space for anything that didn't matter, and a discipline so complete it had long since stopped feeling like discipline and started feeling like just the way she moved through the world. She had grown up understanding that rooms did not offer her the benefit of the doubt, that she would be watched more carefully than the person beside her and credited more slowly, that the margin for error available to her was thinner than what most of her colleagues had been handed without knowing it. She had not become bitter about this, she had become precise. There is a difference, and Zariah understood it the way she understood everything, completely and without sentiment. She had no safety nets, no family money, no institutional connections, no one who had made a call on her behalf. Every surgery she had ever been trusted with, she had been trusted with because she had been standing there, ready, before anyone could find a reason to look elsewhere. She was not lonely. That is important to understand. Loneliness implies an absence you are aware of and aching toward. Zariah was not aching toward anything. She had built a life that fit her. Small, precise, and entirely her own. A good apartment, a few people she trusted, work that asked everything of her and got it. She did not need anyone. She had said this to herself so many times and in so many different ways that it had stopped being a statement and become simply a fact, the kind you stop noticing, the way you stop noticing a scar once it is fully healed. The monitor steadied, the patient stabilized, the resident exhaled. Zariah was already reading the next chart. It was a Thursday night, and the man had no name, no identification, no next of kin contact, no history in the system. Just a body that arrived in Bay 3 at 11:47 with severe internal bleeding and the particular stillness of someone who had already begun the process of leaving. The paramedics gave her what they had, which was almost nothing. Zariah listened, assessed, and moved, because the window between this man living and not living was under 12 minutes, and 4 of them were already gone. She used 11. The decisions she made in that bay were the kind that get discussed in teaching rounds, not because they were dramatic, but because they were correct in the specific, unforgiving way that correctness looks when there is no time to second guess, and no room to be anything less than exactly right. She did not explain herself as she worked. She did not need to. The room organized itself around her the way rooms do when the person at the center of them knows precisely what they are doing and wastes nothing proving it. When it was over, she stood at the nurse's station 4 hours later, finishing her notes in the particular quiet of a hospital at 3 in the morning. The hum of the building, the soft percussion of monitors, the sound of a shift that had asked a great deal and received it. Dr. Voss? She turned. He was tall. Dark suit, immaculate despite the hour. Black hair, clean cut, not a thing out of place. He stood the way certain men stand, completely still, taking up exactly the space he occupied and not 1 inch more. His eyes were dark and entirely unreadable, not the unreadable of someone hiding something in the moment, the unreadable of someone who had made a decision long ago and deliberately that the world did not get to see what was happening inside him. 2 nurses nearby had gone quiet, not because of what he had said, because of who he was. Zariah looked at him evenly. She did not adjust her posture or her expression. She simply waited. "The man you just saved," he said. "He works for me." "He's stable," she said. "6 weeks recovery minimum. No guarantees on timeline beyond that until we see how he responds in the next 48 hours. He nodded. "I know. I watched the Bay footage." A pause. Not uncertain, just precise. "I wanted to understand who saved his life." She looked at him for a long moment. "I finish in 40 minutes, she said. She was not entirely sure why she said it. "I'll wait," he said. She went back to her notes. When she came out 43 minutes later, he was standing exactly where she had left him, not by the desk, not by the door, but in the precise spot where she had last seen him, as if he had not moved at all. She noticed that. She filed it away carefully. It told her something about him before she had learned anything else.
3 months is not a long time, and then sometimes it is the only time that matters. It started with coffee, a place she had mentioned once, briefly, in the way you mention things you don't expect anyone to remember. He had remembered. He had not announced it. He simply took her there, and she understood when they arrived that he had been paying a different quality of attention than she had realized, and she did not entirely know what to do with that. That was how he was, precise, unhurried. He never performed generosity. He simply acted on what he had noticed, and what he noticed was always specific. A book she had referenced in passing 3 weeks before appeared on her doorstep without a note. A restaurant she had described once, in a sentence she had not finished, was booked for a Friday without announcement or explanation. He did not tell her he had been listening, he simply showed her, and there is a difference between those two things that Zariah, who had spent years watching people choose the easier one, understood immediately. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, he said exactly what he meant. No softening, no performance, no decoration. He did not fill silences with noise. He let them exist, and she found, slowly, that she did not need to fill them either. That sitting across from someone in actual quiet was something she had forgotten was available to her. She began to notice things she had not noticed in a long time, what she was wearing before she saw him, whether she was tired in the way that showed. She found herself thinking about conversations before they happened and afterward for longer than was strictly practical. She was not sure when it had started, only that one evening she caught herself looking forward to Thursday, just Thursday, the fact of it, the specific shape of what Thursday had become, and understood that something had shifted in her without asking permission. He said to her one evening, at the end of a dinner that had stopped being careful sometime around the 2nd hour, "You don't perform. Most people do. You just are." She almost laughed. It caught her off guard, the accuracy of it, the way he said it without decoration, like he was simply reporting something he had observed. "Is that a compliment?" she said. "It's the most precise thing I know how to say about you," he said. She looked at him for a moment. "You're very literal." "I find it saves time," he said. She laughed then, really laughed, the unguarded kind that came from somewhere she did not usually let people reach. He went very still, the way he sometimes went still when something happened that he had not expected and did not want to lose. "What?" she said. "Nothing," he said. But something had moved across his face, brief and unguarded, the kind of thing that doesn't happen often in a man like him, and means everything precisely because of that. She filed it away carefully. She was already beginning to understand that those moments were rare, and that she wanted to be in the room when they happened for a very long time.
It was a Tuesday afternoon, and it came from nowhere, the way the worst things always do. She was in the break room between procedures, 10 minutes, bad coffee, the specific exhaustion of a shift that had been difficult in the accumulated, unglamorous way rather than the acute one. Her colleague pulled out her phone, scrolling without purpose the way people do when they have 10 minutes and nowhere particular to put them. "Isn't that—" She stopped, looked closer. "Wait." She glanced up at Zariah with an expression that had already become careful. "Is that the man you've been seeing?" Zariah looked at the screen. It was a society page, the kind she had never read and did not follow, the kind that covered the movements of families whose names opened rooms before they walked into them. The announcement had been posted 6 months ago. A photograph, an engagement, Seo Viral and Kang Jun Seo, in the formal phrasing of people who announce such things to rooms full of people who already know. 6 months ago. She looked at the photograph for exactly as long as she needed to, then she handed the phone back, finished her coffee, and went back to work. She did not cry. She did not call anyone. She did not stand in a corridor or sit in a bathroom or do any of the things that the size of the feeling seemed to require. She finished her shift. She drove home. She sat in her apartment in the particular silence of a woman who has just understood something and needs to stay very still while she finishes understanding it. She thought through everything, every dinner, every specific detail chosen precisely, the book, the restaurant, the quality of attention she had told herself meant something. Every moment she had felt something opening in her, slowly and carefully, in the way she let very few things open. All of it had been happening inside a context she was never told about. All of it built on ground that belonged already to someone else. She turned his calls over for 11 days. She watched his name appear on her screen, and she let it appear, and she put the phone face down and went back to whatever she had been doing. She was not performing indifference. She was simply not ready, and she had learned a long time ago that she was allowed to not be ready before she was required to speak. On the 12th day, she picked up. "You were engaged." No preamble, no softening. Silence on the line. Then, "Yes." "While we were—" "Yes." She was quiet for a long moment, not because she didn't know what she wanted to say, because she wanted to say it only once, and she wanted to mean it completely when she did. "Don't call me again." She hung up. She set the phone down on the kitchen counter and stood there for a moment in the quiet of her apartment. Then she went to bed. She had an early shift. She had patients who needed her to be precise and present and entirely herself. She was not going to give this, whatever this was, whatever it had cost her, any more of the night than it had already taken. She meant every syllable of it, and she did not let herself wonder even once if he had meant any of his.
To understand what Jun Seo did, you first have to understand the world that made him. He had not chosen Sir Viral. That is not an excuse, it is a fact, and facts matter when you are trying to understand how a careful man makes a careless mistake. The engagement had been arranged the way things in his world were arranged, through the right families, the right conversations held in the right rooms, the kind of logic that assembles itself so cleanly on paper that saying no requires a clarity he had not yet found. His mother had presented it, his advisers had confirmed it made sense. Viral was from the right world, understood the right things, would never ask questions that complicated the wrong situations. He had said yes because he had not yet understood what saying yes to the wrong thing actually costs. They functioned.
That is the most accurate word for what he and Virel were. Functional. They appeared at the correct events, said the appropriate things, presented an image that satisfied every room they walked into together. She never reached for more than he offered. He never offered more than was required. It was a life constructed entirely on paper, and for a long time that had seemed like enough, because he had not yet encountered anything that showed him the difference between a life on paper and a life that was actually his. Then he met Zariah. Not the idea of her, not the version of her that was impressive, though she was, completely and without effort. He met the specific person she was, the way she spoke without softening, the way she laughed only when something was actually funny, the way she looked at him sometimes across a table as though she was deciding in real time whether he was worth the particular effort of being honest with. He had not known before her that being looked at that way was something he had been waiting for. You do not know what you are missing until someone shows you, and by then the showing has already cost you something. He made his decision 3 weeks before the wedding, not impulsively. That was not how he made anything. He made it the way he made every decision that mattered, quietly, completely, and only after he was certain. He had been building towards saying it out loud, constructing the words with the same care he brought to everything, making sure the decision was finished before he acted on it. He never got there, because Zariah stopped answering, and he had looked at his phone on the 4th day and the 5th and understood that she had found out and drawn her conclusion and closed the way he had already learned she closed when trust was broken, fully and without performance. And he had not felt he had the right to show up at her door and ask her to wait for something he had not yet been brave enough to say out loud. That was his failure. Not deception, not cruelty, something quieter and in some ways harder to forgive. The courage he had and did not use until someone else paid the price for his silence. He had been 3 weeks away. He had known exactly what he was going to do. He just hadn't done it yet.
C.O. Virel had known about Zariah for 3 months. Not because Junsu told her. He had said nothing, but Virel had not built her position in his world by waiting for people to tell her things. She found out the way she found out everything, quietly, through the right people, without leaving any record of having asked. She identified the situation. She assessed it, and then she did what she always did when something stood between her and what she had positioned herself to receive. She moved. The first thing she did was careful and invisible. A complaint filed with the hospital ethics board, a fabricated medication dosing error, specific enough in its detail to require a formal review, vague enough in its sourcing to resist easy disapproval, timed precisely for a week when Zariah was mid-cycle with a complex long-term patient, when the administrative weight of a review would land hardest. She did not sign it herself. She did not need to. She simply knew the right person to mention the right concern to, and that person knew what was expected of them. And the complaint arrived at the board looking like exactly what it was not: illegitimate professional concern raised through appropriate channels. The second thing was quieter still. A dinner, the right table, the right guest, someone who sat on a hospital oversight committee and whose opinion moved through certain rooms the way water moves through cracks, finding every
every weak point without appearing to try. A concern raised delicately, almost as an aside. Questions about judgment, questions about temperament. Nothing that could be quoted, everything that would be remembered. The third thing was visible. That was the point of it. Heir arrived at the hospital cafeteria on a Wednesday at 12:40, with two women from her circle dressed with the particular precision of people who understand that appearance is its own argument. She had chosen the time because she knew Zariah's schedule. She had chosen the location because it was public, witnessed, and inside the building where Zariah's reputation lived. Zariah was at lunch with a colleague when Heir walked in. She looked up. She understood immediately. Not every detail, but enough. The dress, the posture, the way the room shifted when they entered, the way eyes moved to her own face to see what she would do. Heir crossed the room and reached for her arm. Zariah pulled back, quietly, without breaking eye contact. She said nothing, because she was the one in the white coat, in her hospital, surrounded by colleagues who were already recording this moment in the way people record things they will discuss later. She understood with the same clarity she brought to everything that mattered, exactly what it would cost her to respond, what it would become, how it would be described by people who had not been there and would not need to have been. So she sat with her hands still and her face controlled, and she let Heir say what she had come to say. And when it was over, she finished her lunch. She went back to work. She saved 2 more lives before her shift ended. Heir called it protecting what was hers. It was not protection. It was the systematic, deliberate dismantling of a woman's professional life, executed in stages without fingerprints, by someone who decided that Zariah's existence in Junsu's world was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be reckoned with. And for 6 weeks, it worked almost perfectly.
It was a Thursday morning, 3 days before the wedding, when Min Jun walked in. He had been with the family for 11 years. In that time, Junseo had come to understand him the way you understand someone who has never once required instruction on what a situation called for, not because he was without opinion, but because he had developed over years of proximity to consequence in precise sense of when his opinion was the thing that was needed and when something else was. He knew when to speak. He knew when to place something on a desk and step back and let the thing on the desk do what words could not do as cleanly. He set the tablet down. He stepped back. He left the room without being asked. Junseo looked at the screen for a moment before he touched it. Then he pressed play. The cafeteria footage was shot from a ceiling camera in the upper left corner of the frame, the wide, flat angle of institutional surveillance, the kind that records everything without editorial judgment. He watched Heir walk in, watched her cross the room with the 2 women from her circle, watched the precise trajectory of her path, the way it was aimed rather than wandered. He watched the room shift, the particular stillness that moves through a group of people when they understand that something is about to happen and have not yet decided whether to intervene or witness. He watched Zariah look up. He watched Heir reach for her arm. He watched Zariah pull back, quietly, without a word, without a change in expression that anyone at a distance could have named with confidence.
He watched her sit with her hands still and her face composed in the specific way of a woman who has calculated in real time the exact cost of every available response and chosen the one that protected what she had spent years building. He watched her absorb it completely, without flinching, and then he watched her return to her food because she had a shift to finish and patients who needed her to be precise and present, and she was not going to give this moment more of herself than it had already taken. He watched that for a long time. Then he read the ethics board filing. Then he looked at the timestamps, the full sequence laid out in order, 6 weeks of it, each action placed deliberately over the last, the complaint first, filed earliest, because it moved slowest, the whisper campaign second, the cafeteria last, the only piece designed to be seen, the only piece that needed a witness. He set the tablet down. He sat alone in his office for a long time. The building was quiet around him. The wedding was in 3 days. Every arrangement was in place. 2 families, 200 guests, 6 months of planning assembled into something that would proceed exactly as designed unless someone decided otherwise. He did not change the date. He did not contact Zariah. He did not say a word to Virel. He did not call his advisors or his mother or anyone whose counsel had ever pointed him toward a decision he had not already made himself. He made his decision the way he made every decision that actually mattered, completely, quietly, and entirely alone. The wedding was not a question anymore. It was simply where he was going to deliver the answer.
The cathedral was everything 6 months of planning could make it. Imported flowers banked along every pew, light coming through high windows at the particular angle that made the whole interior look like something composed rather than built. 200 guests in their finest, arranged in rows that represented between them decades of alliance and obligation and the specific social architecture of families who have never needed to explain their importance to anyone. Everything was exactly as it was supposed to be. Junso stood at the altar in his tailored black suit. His face was what it always was, controlled, unreadable. To anyone in that room who had not spent enough time studying it to know the difference between his stillness and his silence. Min Jun stood near the back. Neither of them had spoken since they arrived. There was nothing left to say. The doors opened. Co. Virel appeared at the far end of the aisle and the room exhaled. The collective involuntary response of 200 people encountering something they had been arranged here to witness. She was extraordinary in the way she was always extraordinary. Her white designer dress fitted to precision, her dark hair in a sleek, perfect low bun, her posture carrying the composure of a woman who has removed every obstacle between herself and this moment and is now simply walking toward what she earned. She did not look at the guests. She did not look at the flowers or the light or any of the details that 6 months of planning had assembled for exactly this procession. She looked at Junso, immediately and only. The focus in her eyes was almost proprietary, the look of someone arriving at something they have already decided belongs to them. She walked the length of the aisle with complete composure and stood before him, and the officiant began. Junso looked at her. She saw it in the first second because she had studied his face for 18 months and she knew every version of his stillness, and this was not the stillness of a man preparing to make a vow. This was something else. This was finished. Something shifted behind her eyes. Junso. Her voice was low, controlled, pitched for him alone. Not here. Whatever you think you know. I know what you filed. Quietly. Without decoration or volume. I know about the cafeteria. I know what you did to her. All of it. Something moved across her face then, the fracture of something held together for months, releasing in a single visible instant. It's because of her. Her voice dropped, but still carried to the nearest rows. It's because of her, isn't it? It's because of you, he said, because of who you showed me you were. He stepped back. He walked out. The cathedral stayed completely silent. Not a breath, not a movement, not a single person willing to be the first to break what had just settled over the room. Then Virel turned. She walked back down the aisle herself, head up, jaw set, the composure almost fully reassembled by the time she reached the doors. She looked like a woman who had lost something significant and was already methodically constructing the version of events she would present to the world. But her hands at her sides, where the guests in their careful rows could not see them, were shaking.
She was in hour 9 of a 10-hour shift when her colleague leaned in. "Did you hear what happened at the Kang wedding?" Zariah read the expression on her face, the particular look of someone delivering news they are not sure how to size. She took her phone out of her pocket. She looked at the screen. Then she put it back. "I have a patient in Bay 4, she said. She finished her shift. She saved 2 lives, one that was straightforward and one that was not. One that required the kind of decision-making that left no room for anything else to exist in her mind while she was making it, which was, in its way, a mercy. She lost one, a man in his 60s who had arrived too late for any decision she made to change the outcome, and whom she sat with for a moment longer than was strictly required before she wrote the time. She sat in the break room afterward with cold coffee and the particular heaviness of a day that had asked everything of her and was not yet finished asking. Then she went home. She did not call anyone. She did not look at the news or the society pages or any of the places where the story of what happened in that cathedral was already being shaped into something consumable. She sat in her apartment in the quiet, and she thought, honestly, not hopefully and not bitterly, just honestly, about what she actually wanted on the other side of all of this. She had feelings for him. She was not going to pretend otherwise, because pretending had never been something she was willing to spend energy on. 3 months of something real does not simply dissolve because it became complicated. Feelings are not that cooperative, and she had stopped expecting them to be. But she knew something about herself that she would not negotiate around, regardless of what had happened in any cathedral. She would not be the place a man arrived at after the thing he had chosen first fell apart. She would not be the landing place, the consolation, the thing he found when the thing he had reached for first was no longer available. She wanted to be chosen deliberately, specifically, as the point, not discovered by default. Her phone buzzed. "It's done. I'm at the hospital. I'll wait." She sat with it for a long moment. The apartment was quiet around her. She thought about a man who had watched video footage at midnight because he wanted to understand who had saved someone's life, who had waited 40 minutes without checking his phone, who had gone completely still when she laughed, like he was memorizing the sound of it against the possibility that he might not hear it again. She typed back, "I know where you are." When she walked out of the hospital 40 minutes later, he was exactly where she knew he would be. The corridor by the trauma bay. The same corridor, the same spot, as if no time had passed and everything had. Still in his wedding suit, tie loosened slightly. The face of a man who had done something large and was standing on the other side of it without apology and without performance. She stopped. "You're still in your suit. I came straight here. You could have changed first.
I didn't want to wait any longer than I already have." She looked at him for a long time, long enough to be sure of what she was about to do and why she was choosing to do it. "Say it properly," she said. He looked at her directly, without the stillness, without the controlled distance he wore like a second suit in every other room he occupied. Just straight, like she was the only thing in the frame worth looking at. "Zariah," he said, "will you let me start again? Properly, with nothing hidden and nothing arranged. Just this." A long moment. "Yes," she said, "but go home and change first." He almost smiled. She almost smiled back. He left. She stood in the corridor alone for a moment, in the quiet of a woman who has just chosen something entirely on her own terms, with full knowledge of the cost and a clear understanding of what she was and was not willing to accept going forward. She went back inside. The hospital hummed around her the way it always did, continuous, indifferent to everything that had just shifted. For the first time in a long time, she was not moving through it by herself in the way that actually matters.
Was Varel's campaign unforgivable? Or do you understand, even a little, what drove her to it? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories about women who refuse to make themselves smaller for anyone, subscribe. We are here every week, and we will see you in the next one.